That's grand, thank you very much. Let's get your fingers on the buzzers, thank you everybody. And that's a good check for audibility. Let's see which question of these two would you like answered. How important is early intervention to allow quicker habituation? Or is there a connection between tinnitus and driving a lot? Presumably driving a car. So could you press on your buzzers which of those questions you would like us to address, and I'll give you 10 seconds to accomplish that task. Okay, that's your 10 seconds, 102 responses. Let's see what came in. How important is early intervention to allow quicker habituation? Lucy, would you like to run with that one first?
I'm glad that question got picked because I'm quite interested in that, and I think it's a study that really needs doing. We don't have the evidence at the moment, but I'm sure those of you who see tinnitus patients will agree that something we tend to notice in our patients, that if you manage to see them quite soon after tinnitus onset, then things are a lot easier before people get really stuck into their negative thinking patterns, their avoidance behaviour. All of those things, once they become established, are much harder to get out of. So I'd like to see a really good study looking at early intervention and to make that more possible.
Good, thank you. Don?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought on that is, like Lucy's, that anecdotally I think seeing them early is really helpful. Get some information, get some support before the symptom is bedded in. So I think it's really nice to do that. As Lucy says, there is no evidence to support that fact. That's just my view. And it's one that's very difficult for me to achieve with my NHS hat on. The Clinical Commissioning Group in North East Essex has some specific guidelines for a handful of ENT conditions. One of them is tonsillitis, how many attacks you have to have before you're eligible for a tonsillectomy. But one of them is tinnitus. And the rules for tinnitus are, if you've got, your GP should not refer you to secondary care until you've had it for 3 months if it's unilateral, or 6 months if it's bilateral. So I rarely get to see patients with my NHS, in my NHS clinic, at that early stage. I do get to see them in my private clinic, and I think that's a much more satisfactory experience all round.
Is it possible, do you think, to see somebody too early? Tinnitus patients are often very angry, very distressed, very frightened at first. If you see them in that initial window, is that too early?
Again, that's an interesting question. You get people who say, it started a month ago, and if you'd seen me in the first week, I was tearing my hair out. I couldn't sleep at all, and I couldn't do anything. I wasn't functioning. All I was thinking about was this noise. So, time does improve, and people.
But can I say about to that? Yeah. I think just if we're able to get across that message in those very early days that we are going to be able to do something to help, even if the patient can't take any detail in about what it is and what kind of approach we're going to take, just sort of helping people to understand that there's something that's going to be able to help them. I think that's really important early on.
I think this probably crosses with a question that is an option later down the line in what can be done at that very early stage, and I think that is where the online information and support is helpful, because you can access that instantly, providing you know where to go to.
Absolutely. Anybody else on the panel got a reflection or a quick comment?
I'd just say that my experience of that has sort of been certainly running both a direct access clinic where patients can be referred directly from the GP into audiology, and also comparing that with the ENT-fed tinnitus clinic, which runs alongside that, I do notice that those patients who get referred in directly to audiology, who are often, are definitely seen within 6 weeks of referral, often they're in a much better place than those who have perhaps come in via an ENT pathway that may well have taken them down a much longer route.
You're not going to upset me.
No.
Part of the patient survey that I was talking about looked at that experience, and most people who are referred into ENT are very well medically assessed. They go through all the diagnostic stuff, and about 3/4 of them at the end of the diagnostic process, they're shown the door and there is nothing therapeutic done with them, and that's just wrong.
Quick comment, Larry?
Echoing Don's remarks, I don't get to see people in the NHS until their tinnitus is very well established. In my private clinic, I not uncommonly see people who've had tinnitus a week or 2 weeks or something, and they are absolutely terrified, in a very, very high state of anxiety. And there is a piece of work to be done, a useful piece of work to be done in kind of bringing that down. I'm again echoing another aspect of Don's remarks, and perhaps taking it a different spin, and perhaps on the question which might not have been intended, but about the quality of the early interventions, or the quality of the first interventions that people get, and how that can either be incredibly helpful or the cause of iatrogenic damage. And I would say that perhaps 20% of my work is spent on doing the early work, the first work, rather than the early work, the first work that people have done in their tinnitus journey. Often quite inadvertently, but through ENT or the GP or whatever, frightening the bejesus out of people, really.
Yeah. Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. Fingers on the